Hello and welcome to this lecture on mobile phones and development. Now, since no one of you emailed me with any question concerning the literature, I decided to use my time to record this lecture because I realized that what I want to talk to you about on Friday requires some pre-understanding. So please have a look at this lecture and I will take it from there Friday. You can also find this PowerPoint. I have uploaded the PowerPoint at Studentportalen, so you can find it there. So in this sense, you can watch this lecture and also look at the PowerPoint at your computer, and you can stop the lecture whenever you want and continue, etc. And if you have any questions concerning this lecture, please raise it during the class Friday. So what I wanted to talk about here is mobile phones for development. Basically, the general starting points for this field, because our project that we're going to discuss and I'm going to talk about on Friday builds upon this. We're doing research among market women in Kampala and Uganda using mobile phone and mobile banking in particular. But some background to this whole field can be useful. And this is also a way for me to use my time with you, since you didn't want to come and see me. I come to you instead in this virtual form, so you don't get rid of me that easy. Anyway, so what I'm planning to do is to give you some background of this field, talk a little bit about the rise of mobile telephony, especially in the so-called developing world or the global south. How can we approach development? This is a huge issue. I'm just going to give you some ideas and talk a little bit about the controversies, and then how mobile phones have been approached in so-called development projects in the global south in general and in Africa in particular, ending on some notes on mobile money and use of mobile phones in markets, which I will take it from there when we see each other in real life or away from keyboard on Friday. So, okay, let's start. So in 2008, the University of Karlstad, where I was working, started with the first conference on mobile phones for development, so-called M4D, or Mobile Communication for Development. So this was the first conference in the field solely focusing on mobile phones. And yeah, here you see images of Karlstad and their famous lecture hall here, the Egg. You can actually go inside there and have lectures, which was keynotes and everything were held there in this room. And then in 2010, it was decided that we should continue this conference. And this time I was one of the organizers, and we organized it in Kampala, Uganda. You can see here the picture of the group picture, so to speak, and we have the student assistants here in the yellow T-shirts. And we did this organizing together with the Makerere University, one of the biggest university in Uganda and one of the most important universities in East Africa. Basically, every leader in East Africa has been going there, apart from Uganda's current president, Museveni, who actually did his study in Tanzania, I think, Dar es Salaam. Anyway, so this became then a biannual event. So, and then in 2012, we organized the conference in New Delhi together with my contacts at the Society for Education and Research Development, SURG, and the Asia Pacific Institute of Management in New Delhi. And here you see me together with some of the student assistants in New Delhi. And then we organized the conference in 2014 in Dakar, in Senegal. You have the group picture there, picture from the Gorée Island as well. And this we did together with Université Cheikh Anta Diop de Dakar. Together with Karlstad University, and since I then had moved here to Uppsala University, they were part of a workshop there as well. And we are, as far as I understood, Karlstad University are planning for 2016 development conference. Now, Having worked here for a long time, working with conference contribution, with the proceedings, I've come to understand and know a lot about, well, understand is perhaps too big a word, but come to know this field of mobile telephony and development. I'm going to draw a lot of what I'm talking here today, I'm drawing from these conferences and conference contributions. Now, the whole idea behind this, if we move into the rise of the mobile phone section here. Now, the whole idea behind this field is that mobile telephony has virtually exploded, especially in so-called developing countries or the global. I know that Cecilia, whom you will meet, prefer to talk about the global south than developing countries because it's somewhat patronizing. But in so-called developing countries or in the global south, and you see here is a chart from 2010 from the ITU. And you can see here how in 2010 it was, I mean, this blue line here is mobile telephony. It reached almost 80% of the world population, compared to internet here is about 30%, and you know, the green line here is fixed telephony, so that's actually going down, while fixed broadband subscription is going up slightly, but just under 10% of the world population. Now, if you look at, I don't have a graph from 2014 or 2015, but if we look at the measurements made by ITU, the end of 2014, this has increased. So we have 95% of the world population, approximately 6.8 billion of the world of people in the world have access to mobile telephony. So it's practically every part of the world. I mean, there are still some parts, I mean, I know in Myanmar right now, they are starting to build the infrastructure for mobile telephony, but there are some few parts in remote areas of the world that are untouched by this communication platform, but most of people have it. Now, this for you might not seem so revolutionary, but if we just look at the development here, this has pretty much happened in a decade. If we look at around the turn of the millennium in the year 2000s, you can see here the blue part, I mean 75% almost of 3/3 of all the mobile telephone subscription came from the so-called developed world. So a majority of the subscribers were in the so-called developed world. Now we've seen that well, I know the total is 6.8 billion. So this is still 2010 numbers in these pictures here. But we see how this is gradually changed. So now the majority of the mobile phone subscribers and users in the world, we find them in the global south or in so-called developing regions. So most of the users of this platform, of mobile communication platforms, are found in the global south, not in the west. So this is very interesting, and it's happened very quickly. And as we will talk about a little bit later in this lecture, of course, this raises many hopes and aspirations for development, since everyone now, practically everyone, has access to a mobile phone. How can you use this kind of omnipresent, ubiquitous platform to help people or to better their livelihood, etc., etc.? Some other things here, we also see that countries in development and transition are much more quicker to adapt to new technology or mobile technology. This is also the case in former East Yugoslavia, Yugoslavia in the East, Europe. We also see that mobile telephony is a more equal medium, in the sense that it's distributed among much broader range of income levels than fixed telephony and internet subscription. Well, now it's pretty much everyone. And we also see, if we want to talk about internet here, and we see that internet is slowly also starting to grow, but fixed broadband does not seem to happen here. 90, I mean, we talk 2009, maybe 1-2% of East Africans had internet connection. It's a little bit higher now, but those who had internet connections had mobile internet. So we're going to see when the world gets connected, truly connected all over the world, we're going to leapfrog the whole broadband phase. It's going to be mobile subscriptions mostly, because of infrastructure, because of it's much cheaper. You don't have to draw cables, dig down cables, etc. So it's much easier to distribute. So if we're gonna, I mean, just for a second, think about the future of the internet here. I think it's important to underline that the future of the internet is mobile. So mobile phones and digital inclusion is the future of the internet here. This is according to one of the main people in the field, Jonathan Donner. However, he is also drawing our attention to that there is a huge difference to have just access to internet on your mobile phone and to have access on your mobile phone, your smartphone, and on your computer as well. He talks about the spectrum of digital affordances that people in the West who have internet everywhere in their laptops, in their phones, etc., they can do much more, and there is a whole other level of affordances what they can do with the internet than people in the global south who maybe only have access on small mobile phone with small interfaces, etc. So we need to be aware of that, and of course they claim then that there is not one internet but many internets. At the same time, he also says that we should not get too fixated on the devices. We should also need to look at the infrastructure, and as everyone who has been in the global south or in Africa or in India knows that, I mean, electricity is random, it comes and goes. So yes, yeah, sorry, I just got a phone call. I need to turn this off. Okay. Okay, so we need also look to the infrastructure, supply of electricity, etc. Still, mobile phones in so-called developing countries are used mostly not for internet. We need to keep this in mind. We're not. I mean, we know in countries like India, for example, the rise of smartphone is exploding right now, especially as second generation of smartphones kind of trickle down to these parts of the world. So it is growing, but for most people, we are talking about basic text messaging, perhaps using the phone to take pictures and calling. This is what mobile phones are used for. Okay, so now we know a little bit about the rise of the mobile phones. Let's look at development. Now, this is a notoriously tricky concept. What do we mean by development? Well, there is no agreed upon definition, but one of the gurus in media and communication studies, Raymond Williams, wrote in his famous book Keywords from 1985 that and he challenged the whole idea of development, stating that it's an unexamined idea that also limits and confuse virtually any generalizing description of the current world economic order. So it's a very, very criticizing idea of what development means, and you're going to hear more criticism about this as well. One other major big player in this field theoretically, Jan Nederven Petersi, in his big development reader from 2009, and I think there is a new version out now, talks about development as a struggle over the shape of future, also meaning that how we conceptualize this idea, how we use this idea is very important in how we conceive of the idea. If I look at the conference contributions in the different M4D conferences that I outlined before, there is a very, improvement seems to be a common word amongst the conference goers using this concept that promotes the human, social and economic conditions of people in different parts of the world or in different settings. However, it needs to be underlined here, and as Caroline Wamala Larsson and I have written, also growing back on one of the first overview articles in the field from Jonathan Donner, 2008, there is a strong economic bias here. When people talk about development, when agencies use development, often what is talked about is an economic bias here. Economy is very important. That what is meant is economic development, that the markets get stronger, earning money, etc. And looking at mobile phones or technology or internet and these things, there is also a techno-deterministic bias in the sense that the idea that technology will solve everything, that technology has some kind of inherent effects that will improve here then economic development. Sorry for the typo. Economic. Yeah, development, most often economic development is meant, and there is within the field of mobile phones for development or new technology, information communication technology for development, there's a strong techno-deterministic trends, in the sense that only because there is everyone is using mobile phone, there will be automatic development. This has been countered, and as you will see by me and Caroline in the article that you will read for Friday, we tend to more lean towards Nobel Prize laureate Amartya Sen and his capability approach, in the sense that we should not look at development as purely economic, bettering of economic conditions, but we should also look at people and the capability of people, not only to assess, but to have the capability to transform their life situations. So the idea that development happens if people are able to change their lives and the world they live in, or the world perhaps is too much, but at least the context they live in. And I mean, here you can also draw this has similarities to one other big name here, Paulo Freire, the Brazilian pedagogist and the critical theorist who wrote his famous book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where he also talked about a concept that he called conscienciation, or conscienciao in Portuguese, basically meaning that pedagogy, learning and everything should lead, when it comes to oppressed people or people who are marginalized, perhaps in developing regions, as then Brazil was, should lead to that the people, the oppressed, become aware of their situation and are given the tools to change their situation. So this is another way of conceiving development. Development is about making people aware of their life situation and also giving them the tools or helping them to understand the tools. I mean, yeah, Freire would never accept giving them the tools. For Freire, everything is about doing it together with the people and learning from each other. But the capabilities of people to change their life, basically, is what development is. And this is an understanding of development that we favor. Of course, we should not only look at the individuals and their capability, we also need to look at the structures around in a society, the context, etc. Okay. Well, if we look at the concept of development, we cannot not look at aid and international aid and aid cooperation. And here we see, and this is in the book that you're supposed to read as well, the Nordicom book here. and yeah, this is from a later article of Karen Wilkes and Florencia Engel, but they also write it in the book that you have for this course, that there is a growing tendency when it comes to international aid, which has also a bearing on how development is understood, to put it in the hands of private donors. They are becoming, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, for example, they are becoming the major players here when it comes to development. And this is criticized by Florencia and Karen here, that, I mean, what should be matters of common concerns are transformed into private hands, basically. And in this book as well, Paula Chakravarti's article on this is also very critical of pro-poor, pro-market development projects. I mean, what she's criticizing here is the idea that and this is basically also this economic bias in understanding development, that as long as the markets and I mean the current capitalist world order is promoted and strengthened, it will also trickle down to the poor, so they become more economically empowered in that sense. They get more money, and this will lead to development. So she's highly critical of this. But this is perhaps not so surprising that we see this trend then in development, given that it's becoming increasingly privatized or put in the hands of private owners. Another thing here when it comes to, if we look at the actual government aid cooperation and aid international aid cooperation and how it has had an influence on development projects, is what is often discussed and labeled as an audit society, or stated here, obsessive measurement disorder. And well, the idea that everything needs to be measured. The government has to go back to taxpayers in their countries, of course, but also to their parliaments, to say, like, look, this is what we achieved. This is how the aid money here did, and for these numbers matters. I mean, this is from Gunilla Carlsson, our former Minister of International Aid Cooperation. Now it's Isabella Lövin, as you might know, in Sweden. And she said here in 2010, if we cannot transparently and systematically report on how our aid budget is spent and what is achieved in the form of results, the credibility of development cooperation itself is undermined. So this idea that everything needs to be counted and there needs to be results to show. And for this, of course, technology matters, and dumping... I don't remember who said it now, but it's a quote from someone: dumping technology on the poor. We have handed out this and this amount of computers, this and this amount of telephones, mobile telephones, and now that will have a great impact on the development. Now, is this really so, that we can just dump technology on the poor and hope that magic will happen? And what kind of understanding of development does that contribute to? Okay, let's move on. So yeah, we've already started to look at this. The idea here of technology becomes very favorable in this understanding, well, or in this atmosphere of development that has to be audited for, it has to be counted, it has to be reported on, etc. Technology becomes something that is viewed favorably, and already in the 2003 in the World Summit on the Information Society, the WISs, in the Geneva Declaration, they clearly stated this: we, representative of people of the world, yada 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 yada, declare our common desire and commitment to build a people-oriented, inclusive, development-oriented information society. So the idea here that you could use information technology in development has been around for a long time. Now, the criticism here is, of course, both towards this dumping technology on the poor, because it's easy to count the number of devices you've handed out, it's criticized because it doesn't take contextual aspects into consideration. You need to look at the context in which you cannot just hand over a computer if no one knows how to use the computer, for example. Ken Banks stated in 2011 that ICT should be low cost because people are poor, and also low cost in maintaining. Maybe to get a mobile phone is good, but then you have to pay for its subscription, which can be very expensive. It should be low cost, create local jobs on the local level, not just jobs or promote products from the West, from the donor countries, be understood by local populations. It has to fit in within their culture. They have to, as we say in media and communication studies, appropriate the technology. They should be flexible, adaptable, and be able to be maintained and repaired locally. Now, so this also underlines what Banks does here, is underlines that context matters. And I'm sure Ylva is going to talk about her article that's also in the book here on globalization of the pavement, which is an excellent case study of how the local environment and local media practices matters in how information is spread, etc. But this I'll leave to Ylva to talk. I'll give you some other examples here. For example, how technology is appropriated by local people is this use of religious symbol. Now, Sanatawa, who is doing her PhD in Jyväskylä in Finland, has been written about this, how people, for example, use religious symbols to protect their mobile phones. They believe that this won't be stolen, and also signals, ringtones that are religious melodies, etc. They believe that this will be protect both their phone and their livelihood and their lives. So this is one example of how the technology is appropriated by the ones who are using them. And if we look at development projects, I mean, we can look at this map here. That is a literacy map. Now, as you can see here, in most parts of the world, so-called developing parts of the world in the global south, literacy levels are quite low. So, okay, and as you know, text messaging, writing on computers, using this technology needs some level of literacy. So once again, can we just then dump technology on the poor, and how to design for illiterate, basically, when we're talking about 1 billion people here who are illiterate, how are we going to design devices and technology for the people who cannot read? I mean, I remember one paper from the 2010 conference, Gabriel White, who wrote about this, designing for the illiterate, and also taking the local context into account. Now, for example, when we in our mobile phones use the note here to signal the ringtone or the ring signal, the melody, this is a symbol that is not understood by a large part of the population, because they don't know what this is. They have not perhaps been to school or studied music or anything. So they need to use other symbols here that fits the local context in which the technology is going to be used. I mean, a bell here that perhaps everyone can understand. Another interesting example is the symbol of the phone. I mean, this is often what we use as a symbol of the phone, or to call someone. But this is also, I mean, we saw the chart on the number, the how many people have fixed telephone lines. Where do we have it? Fixed telephone line. The green here is talking about less than 20% of the world population. Yeah. So they don't understand. They have never seen this. They don't never had a fixed telephone line. So then instead, but this mobile phone is a much more it's symbol that can be understood very much easier in some context. So what I want to say here is that yes, context matters. We need to look at the context which is it's used. Another example of this, how people appropriate technology within their context, is beeping. Now this is Caroline has written about this a lot, and also others. Jonathan Donner, for example, has used it. Now, calling on a phone is expensive. In the global south, people don't have money so much, so they beep. And not only in the global south, my partner, for example, beeps me as well. Come down to help me with the bags when I get home. I'll just give you a missed call. So this kind of missed call is a way to communicate without any costs involved. But it's also more than just a cost-saving gimmick here, according to Donner. There is pre-negotiated beeps, like, okay, when I'm down outside your house, I just beep you, I give you a missed call. Or when I'm home, for example, in patriarchal society with a lot of rape, and where women are not safe, this is also a way to say, I'll just give you a missed call when I'm home. There are relational beeps. You with your partner decide what this beeping should mean. Once one signal, I've let one signal go through, it means I love you. Two signals, I love you very much, etc., etc. And then the call me back beeps, like, okay, I don't have any money on my phones, call me back. I just beep you. Which has also happened, at least in my lifetime, has happened to me. People don't have money on their phones now. With these subscriptions we have in the West, perhaps this doesn't happen. We don't have these prepaid cards so much any longer as we had before. And so this is a way to see how the technology is appropriated by the people using it. And there is also, Caroline has studied this from a gender perspective, and also studied this beeping, how it's embedded within gender relations, or learn gender relationships, that boys should not beep and call me back beeps as much as girls, because it's embedded in this general patriarchal structure of to foster codependency and provider roles, where the boys should be the one who provides, who calls, who provides in the relationship, and where the girls should be the dependent ones, and they are then expected to take this role of a provider. And this is also helped through the practice of beeping. Okay, so development, context matters, the importance of phones. Okay, so let us now go and see how have these been looking at the conference contributions here from different M4D conferences. In what areas are then mobile phones discussed as contributing to so-called development? One of the major, perhaps the most concerning conference contribution-wise, is in health-related issues. Many of these countries have large rural population. It's not as urbanized as the West yet, even though urbanization is happening. They have large rural population, and infrastructure is not that good. You cannot travel so well. So here we can see the and perhaps you have one specialist in the country, but with the help of the photographing and sending text and photograph sending possibilities of the phone, you can do what is called remote diagnosing. So you can have the help of the specialist, even though the specialist is not physically in the location. Yeah. And this is an example from a paper from Botswana. So here you have the doctor, I forgot his name, who is a specialist in something, I forgot what, but it doesn't really matter. Now, he's just sitting, he's in the capital here, sitting in front of his computer, and then there are all these different telecenters around the world who can take pictures and send in, and he can do diagnosing out of his expertise, and he hasn't go to all these places. So they get the diagnosis quickly, more quick, and get the right help, hopefully quicker. And there are many this what we see on the picture here is actually malaria monitoring, how agencies have been providing many people in different parts of a country a very simple text messaging based tool to report a number of malaria cases in a different region, and then they just send it in through normal signal, not having to be connected to the internet. This is AMREF, who is African Medical, something, but you get the picture. Using this very tool to monitor, is there an malaria outbreak coming? Is it increasing in this? And someone can sit then in a central location to monitor the number of malaria cases around the country and act when they see, okay, it's starting to increase a lot here, or malaria numbers are not going down, we need to act. And this can also be, of course, in learning, mobile phones in learning, connected to then, of course, health-related issues. There are many examples in our conference contributions. These simple quizzes, and then which can be combined with prizes, they get some kind of reward to educate people. Can a woman pass HIV to her baby during pregnancy? True or false? And then they answer, yes, it's true, they can. And please, do you know that, added with the message, you know that there is, you can now test yourself for HIV/AIDS in this local regional center, and you can get some kind of packet of sugar if you go and do that. I mean, and this text to change with this is, what they showed is that the number of people in Aruba, is a rural area on northwest, rural area in Uganda, where the number of people who went to take HIV test increased with 30% or something like that. Well, it increased a lot. So this is another text to change, which is a Dutch initiative developed in the Netherlands. This is how it works. I mean, you get a message and with, for example, a quiz, you answer the quiz, you get the answer back, and you can, with a message that could perhaps help you to go to the doctor, etc. But not only in health-related issues, we've also seen been used in education, etc. Another big area where it has been used, according to the conference proceeding, is, and that is growing, especially with the Arab Spring and everything, is when it comes to participation and governance. The idea that you can use the mobile phone in political participation, and also to monitor public service delivery. Many studies of this, especially from Uganda and East Africa, because of the East Africa Democracy Network that has been supported by Swedish Development Agency, SIDA, through SPIDER, their branch organization here. But anyway. So they can use this phone to monitor also in elections, for example. And here, very well known, and something that spread to other parts of the world, is Ushahidi, which actually is Swahili and means testimony. And this is crowd mapping, basically. And it started out of the election protest in Kenya. And then and you can actually map where is there a riot, where is police coming, and you get these crowd maps, which has been used in many different parts of the world, also to monitor oil spills in the West, in Alaska, for example. When I was in India, I saw this being used by women to report areas where there were a lot of rape in New Delhi. So this you just mark it with your mobile phone and you send it in, and you get this crowd map. So this, there is a lot of studies of this. This is an interesting study also coming out from Afghanistan, which is a very tribal society, and where basically law and justice is carried out through the eldermen meeting in the jirga to make the decisions and things. Now, in this country with a lot of remote villages and areas, and having everyone to come to deliberate and discuss an issue was considered problematic, especially when the U.S. intervention in Afghanistan, where they wanted to cooperate and have the locals on their side in order to implement their military measures there. They wanted to consult them. So then they come up with that this could be, they could use the mobile phone for to have these yergas and consultation without having to gather all the people all the time in order to decide or discuss an issues. Now, of course, this can be questioned. I mean, the suitability of the US government handing out mobile phones given the NSA scandal. I mean, there is, of course, a surveillance issue here, but this is another topic. So yes, so it can be used in these aspects as well, and as well in more general service delivery and information. The Indian state of Kerala, for example, has been a front runner here in using the mobile phone to with all kinds of information, bus timetables, electricity delivery, or information that now there is a power cut, we're working on it, it's going to come back, etc. Already in the 2006-2007 they had started with this information giving to the public through the mobile phones. It's been very successful. And then we come to the livelihood topic, and this is where our article that you got, when what we're going to discuss on Friday is going to revolve around. So within this area of livelihood, and earning your living, this means many studies within fishing and agriculture. Jensen, for example, had a very famous study in 2007 based in Kerala, actually in this southern Indian state, where he basically show how the mobile phone is used by the fishermen to check in which harbor will they get most money for their fishes, and then there has been other studies. You can check the weather forecast, get information about crop and animal diseases if you're a farmer, etc., etc. Get access to markets and in a way get rid of fraudulent middlemen. And what we see a picture here is from Tanzania, from a women's farmers collective. So there is women empowerment issues, allowing women to collaborate and work together with the help of the mobile phone to communicate with each other, to get their own businesses, etc. So there is many studies on this: agriculture, fishing, and also small and medium businesses, so-called enterprises, SMEs, etc. And very interestingly, which we will discuss more in detail on Friday, the use of mobile money and mobile banking, where, I mean, actually these countries has been in the forefront compared to Sweden, for example, where, I mean, mobile money is still not that, I mean, they are starting, but it's not that widespread anymore. And the idea that you could use your phone as a payment device, and not only as a payment device, but also as a banking device. So what happened was that people who were previously unbanked started using the mobile phone as a bank. And we will talk more in detail how this works and its importance, because this is where our article and our research among market women, their use of mobile banking and mobile money in Kampala, and what role the mobile phone plays here in their businesses, as well as in their relationship with men. So I will leave it here, a little bit of a cliffhanger. More will come. We'll focus more on this livelihood issue and mobile money and gender issues when I see you Friday. So, and please, you have this video, you can watch it as many times as you want. You have the PowerPoint slides in Studentportalen, and if you have any questions, something that was unclear, please bring those questions to the lecture Friday and ask them, or just tell me in advance if you don't want to raise your hand in front of the class, and I will clarify. I'm sure there is a lot of things that's unclear here. Don't be shy. Just tell me what was unclear and I will clarify. Okay, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.